students of Reddit, what's your well that happened moment in the classroom? When I fell asleep in the first row, and the professor and the other students started clapping to wake me up, and when I woke up I also started clapping like a moron. Guy with anger issues started yelling at the teacher and then slapped her across the face. Keep in mind this fat kid was huge and the teacher was this old tiny Asian woman. The nicest guy in the class smokes the guy with a sucker right hand and just puts the guy out cold. At my school we sometimes have drug dogs come and check the lockers. They always announce it like teachers, please do not let students leave the classroom for the next bit of tea. Everyone knows what it means, and one kid in my class grabbed his bag and jumped over 3 desks and ran out the classroom. Turns out he was an entrepreneur of sorts. Had a teacher have a little bit of a mental meltdown in class when she realized that no one really cared about doing the homework and such. She was really sad, and I wish I was a better student for her, and I hope her life is going better nowadays. A physics class in community college. Professor was explaining conservation of angular momentum and had a kid sit on a tall chair that spins. He then had the kid hold 2 books out with extended arms and then spin as fast as he can before telling the kid to pull the books in close to his chest. Think of a figure skater and how they spin really fast. The kid immediately turns into a blur and the stool/chair starts to tip slightly until it rockets from under him like it was shot from a slingshot. The kid slams into the floor as if he got chokeslammed and his head hit the floor in a way that sounded like someone dropped an overly ripe melon. The look on the professor's face said, well, that was a good run. I guess I have to find a new career now. Kid turned out okay and everyone got a laugh, but it genuinely looked like I had just witnessed a death. This wasn't my class, but was the talk of the school for a while. A well-liked teacher gave her class a free workday and offered to play some music. Upon opening her iTunes, she found a file named Transformers MP4. Curious, she opened it. It turned out to be hardcore porn that blasted through the entire class at full volume. Panicking, she couldn't figure out how to shut it off, so she ran the laptop, open and still blasting at full volume, down the hallway to the office to reduce exposure to students. It turns out, the superintendent's son used one of the shared servers to browse and download the video, so it was accessible by every computer connected to the school network. The superintendent resigned a couple years later. Not a student anymore, but we had a supply English teacher that had the good old habit of liking a little drink in the classroom. He used to pull a small bottle of vodka out of the drawer and take a small sip every few minutes while trying to be sly about it. Well, after a while one of the students told a teacher about it, and then the supply teacher was found on his lunch break watching Netflix and drinking a glass of wine in the classroom. Funny thing is, he stayed on as a teacher for another 3 months before being totally kicked out for a similar thing. Someone asked Math, can we cook it? In chemistry. Another person asked our math teacher, who was going home to Canada over break, if she could go threaten to kill his friend who lives there. Same person told the same teacher that he could not do the work because he has 100 extra chromosomes. He does not. She responded by saying, that explains why you look like Tato. I took business English my senior year of high school. We had to do a presentation on a made-up business. 2 kids did a presentation on a frozen yogurt place that was like a make-your-own yogurt thing. You would squeeze the flavors and stuff out of fake cow udders. Straight from the teat was the name of their business. It was a long day. Ex-student here. This was long ago. We sent whispers around the classroom to all drop our books on the ground, pretending it was by accident, when the clock on the wall hit an exact time. When it happened, our teacher was in the middle of writing on the chalkboard, and she turned around, shocked, to find us all picking up our books. She cried after that, and we all started to feel really bad. Learned later she had just had a miscarriage. Sorry teach, we did not know, and we all liked you. In a graduate level optics course, final exam. Professor leaves the room for a minute. Instantly the majority of Chinese students start conferring frantically in Chinese. Everyone's like, WTF. Fat kid comes into science class in the morning not looking too good. Substitute teacher doesn't care, even when we tell her that he is literally going blue. Eventually he throws up on the floor and the teacher goes to him to help. He covers his mouth with his coat so he doesn't throw up on her. He throws up and his vomit goes down his jacket sleeve and gets dumped on her shoes. Substitute teacher walks out of schools with a trail of vomit footprints and says nothing. In first grade, this kid climbed on top of a bookshelf and screamed the Superman theme song before declaring he was Superman. The then proceeds to jump off the bookshelf and collides with another kid. Okay, so this happened a while ago, so I might not have all the details. So I was on the school bus and we weren't allowed to eat on the bus. So the kids behind me were talking about lunch tomorrow, and one of them said, yeah, I can bring bacon. I was hungry so I said, bacon? Who's bringing bacon? The bus driver overheard me, but didn't know it was me, stopped the bus, and yelled, bacon? Who has bacon? Then he walked down the aisle and looked to see who has bacon. It was so funny, but you kinda had to be there. I went to a small college and our classroom sizes were very small, 15 or 25 people, so we got to know everyone pretty well. There was this one guy who came in so stoned that he fell off his chair. Thankfully the prof was relatively chill, so she let him go home. Not my story, but my friend told me how on the first day of class, during introductions and icebreakers, this girl got up and ran toward the door. She did not make it and threw up all over the place, looked around her, and completely horrified left the class. She came back for her stuff later. Also, another time, my professor knew I was turning 21 the night before, and when I came in the next morning, completely hungover and dead, he and the whole class applauded me. It was nice. There was a guy who sat in the front row of one of my classes when I was in community college. He would just bring in fresh vegetable and just eat like squash and cauliflower raw during class. When I was in college, I was sitting in a geology lecture center when someone dressed in a banana costume crashes in, does a lap around the room, then gets chased out of the room by a guy in a gorilla suit who came in after him. 11th grade at bio class. One of my classmates was locally renowned for his nonsense. One day he decided he was gonna leave, and so he walked to the back of the classroom and hopped out the first story window and left. In the middle of class. Same guy, same class brought his banjo in one day and had a banjo jam session before class started. In the largest lecture hall on campus, there's a large reproduction of George Washington crossing the Delaware hanging above a door. One afternoon during my class in said room, some guy dressed entirely in red, white, and blue with an eagle mask walked in, saluted the painting and exited. Two girls in a fight. One of them German suplexed the other into a table. I know that sounds like wrestling, but my teacher in 8th grade had her old wooden table next to her desk to hold extra books and stuff. Girls fought over a dude I think, and after the slapping and hair pulling it happened. When my teacher brought his samurai sword and started yelling random samurai cries whilst trying to teach us about ancient Japan. Quite the period we had that day. First day of school, freshman year in woodshop. Teacher just finishes showing us his safety video on proper use of how to use a table saw. Then he was about to give a demonstration and said, now, you're going to see me do things a little differently than how you just saw it being done in the video you just watched, but that's because I'm a professional and have been doing this for over 30 years. Teacher then proceeded to immediately cut off 3 of his fingers with the saw at the front of the classroom. Blood was spraying everywhere. He was screaming holding his hand. Guys I was with in the back of the class starting laughing thinking it was a prank. Girl in the front of the class projectile vomited. A few of us helped him find his fingers on the floor, went and got the nurse. Someone called an ambulance. They were able to reattach them at the hospital. Wood class was cancelled for the rest of the year, and we all took home economics in its place. When I was a sophomore in HS, there was this one day in my French class where we were going over the homework from the day before. The homework that comes from the book is divided into different sections by letter. So section A, section B and so forth. At one point going over the assignment, no one was paying any attention to the teacher and we were just talking to the people around us. She wanted someone to read their answers from the next section and no one was listening to her. She was getting frustrated at this point. So she raised her voice and said, "I want the D." There was 2 seconds of silence followed by everyone busting out laughing. One of those moments that I'll never forget. Edit, reworded some sentences. So, in primary school, I was around 11, and we had this system of classes visiting the school's library for about an hour to stimulate you to read books. It worked really well. Once a class is finished, a member of that class could go warn the next class, appointed by the teacher, to go to the library. I was appointed to go do that, and pretty proud of it. I knocked the door, opened it and wanted to say, "Hey, it's your turn to go to the library," but suddenly I was distracted by what was on the blackboard. The word Mediterranean Sea in huge letters. This class was being taught about it. So yeah. "Hey, it's your turn to go to the Mediterranean Sea" is what actually came out of my mouth. Bonus. No one of my own class found out. Extra bonus. The word in our language for library is bibliothèque, but in dialect in those times another word was bokerage, which translates to bookery, and I think bookery would be a nice word for library.